These days, it's pretty sad being a South African. Quite frankly, being a South African, you sort of wake up every single day to a country living in denial, a country that cannot see the trajectory that they are on. People just sort of sleepwalking their way towards an inevitable doom. You have a government that is beyond racist, a government that has over 140 race based laws, every single one of them targeting a minority group within the country, and every single one of these laws in place to try and cover up significant failures of the government. But of course, it is this government that continues to double down and triple down on their policies, refusing to acknowledge, even for a moment, that some of these race based laws, some of these laws that keep young people who are white out of universities, that keep young people who are white out of business, that sort of force white people. And that truly is what happened in South Africa. As the government continued to make it harder and harder for people of white skins to work in the business world, these people with white skins started opening their own businesses. These businesses started flourishing. And now the government is trying, through BEE and an extension of BEE, force these new white companies to also become BEE companies by hiring black people, because that's just what the government does. As it continues to fail, it continues to double down and triple down and quadruple down in some cases on some of these incredibly terrible laws. But of course, the left in South Africa will not admit to this. The media in South Africa will quite literally, and you'll see later in this video, how the media will hold multiple opinions in their heads. Whether these are mutually exclusive opinions or not doesn't matter. They'll hold them and they'll use them whenever it suits them. In this speech in Parliament, Cyril Ramaphosa, and I won't play the whole thing for you because it's 5 minutes of him basically just talking nonsense, but in this talk, Cyril Ramaphosa goes on and on about how important BEE is for the country, how important it is. And he genuinely has a story in the speech where he goes, as black people, when we see a place that's owned by black people, oh, it warms our hearts. And it's like, oh, well, when I go to a business and I see that the business is owned by white people, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, I couldn't care less. Are they doing a good job? I couldn't care less who owns what business. As long as they're doing a good job, I genuinely don't care. But he goes on this whole tirade of how important BEE and transformation is, because that, of course, is the promise that they're going to give black people the means of production, because according to the ANC, the black people don't have the means of production. And unless the black people have the means of production, the economy will never actually fix itself. Except one of the biggest problems with this entire thing is when you actually look at what is happening in South Africa currently as a result of BEE. Remember, we have BBBEE or BEE. It all comes down to the same thing. It's broad-based black economic empowerment. As a result of this, 1 trillion rand has moved between 100 politically motivated or connected people. You see, because BEE, unlike what the government wants to pretend it is, has nothing to do with making the economy better for the people of the country. The people of the country don't matter. BEE is about rewarding those connected to the government, because it's how the government maintains its power. It's how the government maintains its presence. It's very important that you understand that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa has never built a single thing in his life. The man is a multi-billionaire, at least by South African standards, and he has never built anything in his entire life. He made all of his money as a result of BEE. This is where his money came from. You see, so from his perspective, he has every reason not to remove BEE. But let's just take a look what this entire scenario, this doubling down of the South African government, what this has actually meant for South Africans. 482 businesses have closed in the first 4 months of South Africa of 2025. Why have they closed? Because the economy is untenable. the economy is breaking down and there is absolutely nothing that business can do as the government continues to make it harder and harder for businesses to operate. More and more business owners are simply finding it easier to close shop. More and more business owners are finding it easier to flee the country than to try and stay and make it work. And for a lot of these people, there's just literally nothing that they can do. You check voluntary liquidations in South Africa increased by 25.7% year on year, whereas compulsory liquidations initiated by creditors declined by 29.4%. This is quite bad because what this tells you is people no longer even have interest in containing or maintaining their businesses. They're closing shop before they're even forced to do so because they're finding it harder and harder to actually make things work. South Africa is facing a continued rise in business closures with over 100 companies liquidated in April 2024, marking a 13.2% increase compared to the same period last year. In 2025, it's not much better, just FYI, as you can see here, right? So this is from 2024, and it's just going sort of the wrong direction. But continuously, we're told by the ANC that, hey, we need to do more BE, we need to have more connections, we need to grow more, we need to make everyone part of the economy, and the only way we can do that is through government intervention. Of course, this is the kind of stuff that we in South Africa have to deal with every single day. You have my government that just yesterday celebrated a 0.1% growth within the economy. The government welcomes positive first quarter GDP growth of 0.1%. Now, you might say, but Akelon, 0.1%, that is growth, no? So before we look very quickly at the inflation rate of South Africa, remember, a 0.1% population or GDP growth, the population growth in South Africa is 1.33%. A golden rule is that your economic growth, your GDP growth, has to be at least the same as your population growth. Why? Because the economy cannot stagnate while you add more and more people to the economy. That'd be bad, right? Because these people won't have jobs, they won't have money, the economy won't be able to accommodate them. Ideally, you would like the economic growth to be at least 2 or 3 times more than what your population growth is. But having it at least the same is probably not that bad. It's 0.1, so we're very far off from actually, in technical terms, just compared to the growth rate of the nation, the economy shrunk by 1.32%. Right? So there's actually a shrinkage, not an economic growth. More importantly, when we actually look at the inflation rate of South Africa, now remember, the inflation of a country is how poor that country is getting, how its currency is losing purchasing power. So if economic growth is the growth of an economy, inflation is the shrinkage of an economy. And the inflation in South Africa currently sits at between 4 and 6%. I say between 4 and 6% because the government can't make up their minds as to what they want to taste for. So they'll taste for whatever makes it look best. But let's go with the lowest one possible, right? The one that they say is probably currently what's happening, and that would be 3.2%, right? That's for the first 2 months of 2025. So let's say 3.2% is the inflation rate of South Africa. You had economic growth of 0.1%. This means that you had an economic decline of 3.1%. The economy is contracting, not growing. So the government celebrating this nonsense is just that. It's complete nonsense. There is no growth in South Africa at current. And then finally, let's just quickly talk about this nonsense that everyone continues to talk about when it comes to the whole genocide thing. You have the president of South Africa here saying that, oh, kill the boer, kill the farmer. What are you talking about? It's just a liberation chant and people shouldn't take it as seriously. I can tell you now, if I, as a South African, started using the K word as a white South African, I'd be in jail. Then suddenly my freedom of expression would not be welcomed. Even though I could very realistically make the argument that the K word is simply a historic word that we used to use here in South Africa to refer to black people during the struggle years of apartheid. You know, we were struggling against the black people in South Africa and we used to call them the K word. And we just want to throw back to that period of time. Now, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't like that word specifically, but technically, under the rules of South Africa, I should be allowed to say that because apparently it's just liberation chants. It's just people shouldn't take it as seriously. But of course, the South African government is doubling down on their attempts to explain expropriation without compensation, and how it will not be used indiscriminately. People should stop worrying about this, even though the law quite literally is indiscriminately applicable. You can literally take any property you want. There's no in law that says that you can only take this type of property or only that type of property. All it says is that if the government wants to take a piece of property and they can find an equitable reason for taking the property, they can take it. Equitable is literally one of the most nonsense words in the English language, because anything you want, you can make sound equitable. So technically speaking, while the government is saying we're not going to take this land, they are going to take this land. Of course, the government continues to double down on this idea that we will take the land. This is our land. You have the president of South Africa here telling white people to stop fleeing the genocide and stay like men. Don't be cowards. Really double down. Let us kill you in style, basically, effectively. But then it gets even worse when you actually dive into, well, this is confusing, to say the very least. When you look at eyewitness news, now remember, the entire country consistently tells us white people own all the land, and all of this expropriation without compensation stuff is to get the land. They want the land because there's too many white people that own too much stuff. Except, of course, it turns out that's not even true at all. It turns out that, and this is from Wandile Shalobo, so a black person who said this, most South African farmers are black. Why Trump got it so wrong. So why the hell are we taking land from white people and giving it to black people when most South African farmers are already black? It sounds like it's going in the right direction. It sounds like black people are finally taking ownership of the land. Why are we doing this, and why are we continuing to do this? Because we're continuously told that, the white people own all the land, the white people are all the farmers, and the black people require all of this, because how dare the white people own anything? Because according to my own government, white people are not actually welcome in South Africa. Fundamentally, it's all nonsense, it's all bullshit, it's all performative, because this government, my government, is a communist state, and their dream scenario would be to have communism within South Africa. It is as simple as that. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments section down below how you feel about all of this. If you are from South Africa, leave me a comment. I'd love to read your thoughts. And then, of course, as always, hit the like if you liked, the dislike if you didn't. And I'll see all of you in the next one. Peace.